This is In-Ear Insights, the Trust Insights podcast. Do you want to use AI in your marketing, but you're not sure where to start? Take a class with Trust Insights and the Marketing AI Institute. The AI Academy offers more than 25 classes and certification courses to start you on your AI journey, including our Intelligent Attribution Modeling for Marketers certification. One membership gets you access to all 25 classes. Visit trustinsights.ai/AI Academy to learn more and enroll today. That's trustinsights.ai/AI Academy to enroll today. Are you struggling to reach the right audiences? Trust Insights offers sponsorships in our newsletters, podcasts, and media properties to help your brand be seen and heard by the right people. Our media properties reach almost 100,000 people every week, from the In-Ear Insights podcast to the Almost Timely and In the Headlights newsletters. Reach out to us today at trustinsights.ai/contact to learn more. Again, that's trustinsights.ai/contact. In this week's In-Ear Insights, it is the end of year. It is the end of what was simultaneously a very fast and very, very, very long year filled with more changes that anyone could have forecasted. Last time this year, we all had these, grand marketing-based silly things like 2020 vision and stuff, and then the world irrevocably changed. So we're looking back this year at the year that was and some of the things that stood out. So, Katie, what, beyond the most obvious thing, the pandemic, what are the things that stood out for you this year from a marketing and business perspective?
I think the thing that stood out was really the agility. How quickly can marketing teams adapt? How quickly can they, become a relevant part of a conversation versus just, being 5 days behind? How quickly can we all adapt to different trends? I saw an article yesterday about the top Christmas gifts this year, and I saw a couple of things on there that I was a little bit surprised to see. I think one of them was like a Mr. Coffee, like coffee maker, was one of the top Christmas gifts this year. And that doesn't strike me as very Christmassy, like as a gift, but it might make sense. People are home all the time and making coffee all the time. So it's like, how quickly can we adapt to what's actually going on versus what we had planned? One of the things, Chris, that we had planned for Trust Insights this year, and we had started to roll it out, what were quarterly predictive analytics reports available for marketers to be able to use in their content planning, in their ad spend planning. We rolled it out literally the day after the pandemic started. And I remember very clearly, we got an email from someone saying, I don't need this right now. I'm getting thousands of emails about, the pandemic or the coronavirus. It was early March. And it just struck me as like, man, we really got that one wrong.
We did, but again, I think this year really did a painfully fantastic job of explaining the limits of some of what you can do with data and forecasting. We have said for years, you can go back and watch all our old keynotes from as early back as like 2014 when we were starting to talk about this stuff first, that black swan events, those unusual events are things that break predictive forecasts. And this was like a 700-pound swan this year. This swan will bite your arm off. And it showed. It showed because it changed everyone's behaviors, business, people. For me, one of the things that I always look at when you're looking at any kind of crisis situation is I take the tack that crisis amplifies what's already there. So people who are good become better. People who are bad become worse. And situations and companies get tested to see if they are strong enough to adapt. And we saw plenty of companies this year, to your point about agility, that weren't fast enough and strong enough to make it. And we saw plenty of companies that innovated, that found their way out. We saw lots of people, you and I have been working from home for 3 years now. And I've been homeschooling, my kids for, 15 years. So, that to me was not new. But a bunch of other things were new. I finally get to, not be a complete freak wearing a mask all the time anymore.
And it definitely says something to sort of, you've always been a forward thinker in technology in marketing, but also it sounds like just in your, everyday life, you're always trying to be one step ahead. And what also strikes me is the amount of companies. So we were just talking about how we got the timing wrong on one of the things we were rolling out, but also in some ways the tone deafness of a lot of the messaging and, trying to exploit what was going on in order to have some sort of like, cutesy, snappy, like marketing campaign. And, given the amount of devastation that we've experienced this year, it just feels wrong. I know that, like, sort of tongue in cheek, Chris, you pulled the data on the most overused words, and a lot of them were like unprecedented and so on and so forth. But the fact that those are overused because people are trying to use them to sell you something, it's just it just feels wrong. And I think that, when we reflect on this year, one of the things that we know from asking our audience, from asking our network, is that people are exhausted because everybody was at home this year. Marketing teams really only had digital media to work with, digital channels, emails, social ads, millions upon millions upon millions of pieces of content, more than was planned, probably because they had nothing else that they had, to serve up to their community. And it just, I think you're right. We've absolutely seen this year sort of our limits, the limits of certain teams, the limits of certain companies, our own personal limits in terms of what we're capable of giving, but also what we're capable of taking in. And I think that we need to remember that moving into next year of, we're starting to see that light at the end of the tunnel, but we're not out of it yet. And so, at least for the time being, we have to have more empathy and be more mindful of everybody around us, not just, how many dollars can we bring in.
Mindful, and the other thing is intentional. When I look at my to-do list from this year, like literally the first page is all stuff that I didn't get to. All the client work got done, all the priority stuff got done, but there's a bunch of things like coding projects and things that are just kind of languishing on the list. And that is because, at least I know myself personally, have not been intentional enough about saying, nope, this hour of the week, I'm just going to work on, a coding project, regardless of what's going on, no meetings during that block, etc. And I feel like in talking with others, a lot of other people are in that situation too, where they haven't been as intentional enough in their work as they want to be. And they're kind of like, well, the year got away from me. We've talked to a lot of people, a lot of clients. They're like, yeah, the year just got away from us. And we have one client right now that's trying to scramble to make up ground because there wasn't that almost presence of mind throughout the year to keep an eye on the analytics, keep an eye on the data, and go and as best as you can forecast and go, okay, this is kind of where we're going to be by the end of the year, instead of going on December 1, we are minus 40% to our goal. We should try to fix that in the next 31 days.
It's interesting. Mindfulness is not something that comes easily. And I think that one of the reasons why we've all struggled to do things with intention and to do things mindfully is that we're literally just taking it day by day. And every day feels like there's a brand new dumpster fire. Every day there's a new crisis. Every day there's a new this, there's a new that. And it doesn't really give us that space to be mindful. And I think that, yes, we can create it, but at the same time, we kind of feel guilty about taking that time when there's so many other things on fire. And so I know that for us, we usually try to take, a couple of days every quarter to just sort of say, what did we do? What do we want to do? And we've skipped over that this year. We've just kind of like continued to go through, like, what are we doing today? Let's get this done. Let's get this done. And it's partly survival. And it's partly just we're emotionally and physically exhausted and don't have the resources to create that mindfulness and to create that space in order to think through what do we intentionally want to be doing.
It's true. And a lot of that, when you listen to wellness folks, is about, enforcing that, creating those boundaries, making sure those boundaries exist. But it also is, if you think about sort of your own internal resources, like a bank account, this year overdrew everyone, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, what if finance experts say when you're essentially starting over is start small, but be vigilant about it. Say, okay, yeah, we know we don't have the wherewithal to do a 2-day retreat every quarter, right? Let's start with an hour. Let's start with an hour where like this is our hour, and nothing other than like a trip to the ER is going to change that. And you start to build back your fortunes. Anybody you've watched who has legitimately done the rags to riches a couple of times, without having to rely on unsavory means. They start small, they find something, they latch onto it, and they grow it, and they get back to where they were. Maybe they even exceed where they were. And I think when you look back at 2020, you're right. We spent down a lot of our emotional and mental resources, and we didn't invest a whole lot. There were limited opportunities to invest, and it's not something I think people had in mind. So going into the next year, folks will have to give some pause to whether that's important to them, and if it is, what they'll do to really enforce those boundaries.
The name of the game is consistency, and that's something that we've kind of lost a little bit of track of, again, because we're just trying to navigate every single day between the business and personal lives and everything else. Well, so let's focus a little bit on some of the good stuff that we learned this year, especially for ourselves and within Trust Insights. And so as we started talking about earlier in the conversation, we definitely tried to do some things that just weren't the right time, and those efforts will come back at some point when the time is right. But Chris, what are some of the things that you think that we've done well this year?
This year we've written a ton of code. I think I've listened better to what folks have going on. One of the things that we were talking about before the show got rolling is this year we set up for the first time our own link shortening server for what we share on social media and email. And just having data insights like this, for those who are listening to the podcast, you can check the video version of this out on our YouTube channel, and you can see what I'm showing. It's just a list of pages in Google Analytics. These are not necessarily ours. This is all the links we shared. And when you look over the year, you get a sense of what people are interested in. Having a finger on the pulse of what's on people's minds, I think is something that we've done well from a data perspective, and of course from a community perspective. This year we really built up our Slack community, Analytics for Marketers, which if you go to trustinsights.ai/analytics for marketers, we're now up to almost 1,500 members there. Has been a pretty significant effort to grow a community, again, with intention. I think listening to folks and being able to ask people questions is stuff that went very well. I know from a personal professional development perspective, the silver lining to a lot of events just kind of having to pivot is that there is now so much free stuff floating around out there. Every single conference that I would have gone to, or I would like to have gone to this year, was online for free. And I have a backlog of like 200 sessions from a bunch of these different events that I've been going through, Sunday mornings, just watching and as I do chores and things. And it has been amazing just to see, like, okay, that event not worth going to, this event, like, okay, we should seriously consider when it reopens, going to this one, because it was just so eye-opening as to what's possible. And being able to bring in all that information, say, okay, here's a professional development plan for myself for the next year, like work on these things, build these things. We tried a bunch of new techniques and code this year that has really worked out well. I'm very proud of the fact that we made substantial changes to a lot of our core code that makes it run better. And with our collective feedback and client feedback, being able to say, yeah, you know what, this report that wasn't as useful is more useful now, because we gave some time and intent to the so what of the report. So I think from a bunch of different perspectives, there was a lot that happened this year that was inadvertently positive as a result of all the major changes. How about you?
I think that we really had an opportunity to look at what kind of value were we trying to bring to the market? What kind of value were we trying to bring to our clients? And so we've seen a lot of our clients go through this crisis with the pandemic, because they are consumer brands. They're directly involved, with the consumers and, people who are dealing with it. And so I think what we've been able to do, I think you're absolutely right. I think the listening, listening better, listening more, really trying to not upsell like just anything to make a dollar, but really trying to figure out, is this thing that we can do valuable to anyone? Will it help make anybody's life easier? And we've always lived by that kind of mantra, but now this year it was really explored and experimented with, because we really wanted to make sure that, not only were we providing value to our clients, but that moving into next year, they didn't just see it as like a stopgap. They saw it as something that they really wanted to partner with us on, which I think is fantastic, because that's the kind of work that we really enjoy doing, is seeing other people succeed based on the work, that we do and we can provide to them. So I think we definitely did a lot more soul searching, if you want to call it that, in terms of what we provide. But I think, you're right. We definitely banded together. We took a look at some of the things that we were doing, saying, is there an opportunity to do this better? Do we need to be doing this thing over here? And I think that, despite the fact that we feel like we didn't really do a lot of things mindfully or intentionally, we did. We just didn't do it in those dedicated pockets of time. They were just spread out in drips and drabs over the years. So when you add all of those things up, and when we look at what we've done, we see that there's a lot of positive. And it's something that I would encourage, other marketers and other companies to do. Is it's so easy to focus on all of the negative and what didn't happen, to take a moment and look at all the positive. And that's one of the things that we're trying to do, within this podcast. It's not our typical, here's an analytics challenge, here's how we approach it. This one is a little bit more of those like soft skills, which is different for us.
It's different, but I think this year everything got fractured, but time itself got fractured in a lot of ways. I remember a number of memes floating around saying, 2020 was January, February, March, all the months together. And then, November 3rd for the month. And then, Happy New Year. And in those moments, one of the things you do have to do is to be able to make the best use of the time that you had. I remember there's one coworker used to drive me up a wall years ago, who would say with like 45 minutes or 30 minutes between meetings, I can't get anything done. There's not enough time to sit down and get any deep work done. Like, well, then do something else. But don't just sit there playing video games for 30 minutes, you dummy. And this year, having looking at calendars, looking at the year in the past, there's a lot of fractured time. And so, to your point, if you can make use of 15 minutes between meetings, if you can make use of an odd block of time and make a little bit of progress on any one thing, then at the end it does add up. It's kind of like fitness and weight loss. You just do work out consistently a little bit every day, and you eventually get your goal, but it's almost never something that's instantaneous. Looking at what
go ahead.
No, go ahead, please.
I was going to say, I would actually compare it more to sprint planning, where you have to break down your milestones into much smaller little chunks. And so that could be one of those things, moving into next year. If your to-do list feels big, daunting, and overwhelming, I know something, that has helped me, and, I do struggle with anxiety, is, Chris, to your point, what can I get done in 15 minutes? Everything feels big and overwhelming right now. Everything feels like it's going to take hours. Everything feels like it's going to be, the only thing I can do today. And it's really those small incremental things, that are going to help you keep putting one foot in front of the other.
Yep. So looking at the data of what people shared and were interested in this year, it's interesting, not surprising, interesting. Social media, a lot of emphasis on email marketing came back this year, podcasts and stuff. And so going into next year, I feel like we're at a point where we've finally managed to reboot somewhat of our media landscape and have a better understanding of it now. And one of the things that occurred to me over the weekend is people now are at a point where they have more media than they know what to do with. We were just looking at the Disney Plus announcements recently. Disney Plus is creating like 21 new shows, spin-offs of spin-offs and things. It's like, okay, well, that's a lot. That's a lot for people to consume, and everybody who in the digital environment is trying to figure this out. Disney has abandoned movie theaters, they said, and they're focusing entirely on streaming shows now, which is where they're making their investments. And so for us as marketers, we have to think, how can we make our content faster and fit into those smaller blocks of time? If you have 15 minutes between meetings, that's enough to read an email newsletter, or at least skim it. That's not enough to listen to a live stream. That's not enough to even possibly to listen to a podcast. So providing transcripts and stuff like we do with our show makes your content a little faster. People can read like almost 3 times as fast as they can listen to a podcast. So as we go into the new year, be sure that you're looking at your data and seeing what things are getting traction, what things are not getting traction. Email has been a massive driver of business this whole year, and I don't see that changing. We've said many times in past episodes, people are tired of looking at their screens all day long. If they can get in, get out, and then go on and do something else, they should. I think there's an opportunity for marketers, and it's one of those things you have to be very selective about. But I think there's an opportunity for something like print magazines in very limited runs, or maybe even just print on demand, to make a comeback, just for people to have something to do that isn't a screen, a paper book, possibly some kind of other interactive physical things. Again, this is not something you're going to be able to do at scale because it gets crazy expensive, but maybe for your 10 best customers, maybe you do a limited edition, quarterly piece of dead tree, just so that they have something to look at that isn't the normal stuff. So Katie, what's your parting advice for people going into 2021?
It's the same advice that I would give them this year. Be gentle with yourself, take things like literally one task at a time if you're feeling overwhelmed, which, this year has been very easy to feel. People who didn't previously struggle with anxiety are now experiencing anxiety for the first time. And those of us with anxiety, it's only been amplified. And sometimes it feels like you can't get anything done. And so, tackling your to-do list, tackling the goals of your company, if you're a smaller company, even if you're at a larger company, breaking it down into smaller increments so that you can see, I did this one thing and it pushed me more towards my goal. I did these 2 things and it pushed me closer to my goal. You may not be able to see all of the progress all at once. And Chris, to your point, it's a lot like working out. I can ride my bike for 60 minutes one day. I'm not instantly going to have a 6-pack. I have to continue to do these things consistently, incrementally in order to get those results. And I think that that's sort of where a lot of us, our headspace is I need results now. I need something instantaneous. I need something to cling to. I need something good. But really breaking it down and doing those smaller bits and pieces are what are going to get you there and make it sustainable.
Yep. So from us to you, we hope you had a good enough year, right? We hope that you have a safe and happy holiday season. And here's hoping for everybody in 2021 that we have an equally safe, healthy, and prosperous year. I've avoided making substantial predictions because we just don't know what's going to happen. But we can say with moderate certainty that by this time next year, things will look closer to the world we used to know than they do right now. We don't know the exact timing of what's going to happen, but it's a pretty good bet that a lot of stuff will be starting to get back to normal. So be ready for change. Change is not slowing down. It's going to be even faster next year. So be ready for it. Know that's going to happen and ride that wave as best as you can to bring yourself to business success. Thank you for listening and watching to everything that Trust Insights did this year. And we hope you have a great one. We'll talk to you soon. Take care. Want help solving your company's data, analytics, and digital marketing problems? Visit trustinsights.ai today and let us know how we can help you.